This video is going to talk about the basic requirements that you need to be able to become a U.S. citizen through naturalization. So the first thing is you have to be at least 18 years old. You probably are if you're watching this video and you scheduled your own consultation, but we want to throw that out there. It is a requirement. You also have to have lived in one of the jurisdictions of the local office for at least 3 months. So if you've moved really recently, moved residences, you might have to wait a little bit until you get to the time period where you've been there long enough to file at the local office. This rule basically exists because I guess theoretically they don't want people just going somewhere on vacation for a week and filing their naturalization application, and they want to make sure that you actually live there. It only really becomes a problem if you move really, really frequently, and then one of our attorneys who'll be meeting with you one-on-one can go through what can be done in that scenario or try to help you make a plan for meeting that requirement. But so you do have to have lived in the jurisdiction for at least 3 months. Another major requirement is that you have had a green card for 3 or 5 years. So the general rule is that to become a citizen, you have to have been a green card holder in good standing for at least 5 years. But there's actually a special exception, a special advantage for green card holders who are married to U.S. citizens. So if you've been continuously married to a U.S. citizen for at least the last 3 years, and so that means they've been a citizen the whole time and you've been married to them the whole time and you're still living with them, you're not separated or not living together or anything like that, and you continue to be through the naturalization process, you actually only have to do it for 3 years. So you either have the 3 or 5 years of presence. Now you'll actually be able to file the naturalization application 90 days before you get to the 3 or 5 years. So some people actually file their naturalization application at basically 2 years and 9 months from the date they've got their first green card, or 4 years and 9 months from the date they got the first green card, if they have the 5-year requirement or time of being a green card holder. So those are important dates. You also have to have been physically present in the United States for more than half of the time for those last 3 or 5 years. So if you travel a whole lot for business or any reason, you've traveled a lot, you're gonna have to count up the number of days that you were out to make sure that you do spend enough time here in the US and kind of plan your travels wisely if you don't have quite enough time, to make sure that you can get yourself eligible in that reason, for that reason. If you've made any long trips outside of the United States, like if you've ever been out of the US for 6 months or longer while you were a green card holder, that's something you're going to want to discuss the circumstances of that trip with the attorney at your consultation, because that can sometimes cause a problem with naturalization, either change the timing or disqualify you altogether if it's a very long trip. And so that's something that we would have to check into. But so part of you're here more than half the time total, and you haven't left, you've never left for 6 months or longer. So all your trips have been 5 months and something or shorter. You also have to, in most cases, speak and read and write basic English. So I know that since you're watching this video in English, you probably do, but in case you're helping someone else who will be having this consultation for them, I'm still going to explain this part of the requirement. You don't have to be 100% fluent in English. Sometimes people will take special classes to prepare them for the types of English vocabulary they're actually going to need to pass their naturalization. And there is a published list of the words that are used for reading and writing. So it's a one-page sheet. It's not like they can ask you to write anything in the universe, of all of the however many thousands of English words that exist. But you do have to have at least basic English, and there are some exceptions to that if you have been a resident for a very long time. If you are at least 50 years old and you've been a resident for at least 20 years, then you can use an interpreter if you need to. Or if you're at least 55 years old and you've been a resident for at least 15 years, that's another way to qualify to use an interpreter. So there are some exceptions. There are also exceptions if you have a medical reason that you're unable to learn a foreign language. Maybe you have some sort of head trauma, or there are lots of different medical situations that can cause somebody to have difficulty learning new information, and so there are also exceptions for that in some scenarios. But most people will just simply do the interview in English and they'll pass the English test, and that's how they'll meet that requirement. There's also a U.S. civics and history test requirement, so you have to know some amount of information about the history of the U.S., and there are similarly some exceptions if you have medical problems and things like that. And then probably one of the biggest requirements that people can be concerned about is that you have to have what's legally called good moral character. So it's sort of an old term that means, are you a good person or not, by the legal standard of the US. And so there are definitely people who've had some types of criminal history and they are still able to qualify under good moral character. But if you've ever been arrested or had any legal issues like that, then you're going to want to get the documents related to that and show them to the attorney at the consultation, so that we can, sometimes just based on looking at it, we can tell right away that it's okay or it's not okay. But sometimes it would actually require additional, legal work to figure out a definite answer in your case. But so the basic rules about good moral character are that they're really going to be mostly looking at that last 3 or 5 years and incidents that happen within that time. So if you don't have any incidents within the 3-year period, if you have the 3-year requirement, or you don't have any criminal incidents within the 5-year requirement, if you're a 5-year person, then you're probably fine. There are some very, very extreme types of criminal histories you can have that would make you ineligible for your entire life. Like if you killed someone or you had a really, really serious level of certain types of felonies, you might never be able to qualify for good moral character. But we can get you more details depending on the actual situation at hand. So it'll be really important for you to bring as much detail as possible to the consultation, or submit it, or just to discuss with the attorney during the consultation, so that we can know if you're going to have a good moral character issue or not. There are other things that could theoretically be involved in good moral character determination, like if you don't pay child support that you owe, or if you owe the U.S. government taxes and you haven't paid them and you're not on a payment plan. If you're on a payment plan, they're okay with that. But if you just are like, I owe you a lot of money and I didn't do it, those can also cause you to get in trouble from a good moral character standpoint.